I'm Mark Hennick. This is So-Called Normal. Hey folks, welcome to So-Called Normal. I'm Mark Hennick. Today on the show we have Instagram influencer, actress, all-around beautiful person, Kenzie Brenna. I so much enjoyed my conversation with Kenzie. We went deep into her past, into her history. We talked about really interesting issues around body image and how she advocates and shares herself so freely with the world. And she was just such an inspiring person. I've been following her for a while on social media, so it was really an honor to have her come into the studio and share her stories with me. So I know you'll like it and really take a lot and be inspired by what she shares. So without further ado, here's Kenzie Brenna on So-Called Normal.
I'm not originally from Toronto. I'm from more of a rural little town called Uxbridge, Ontario. Mm-hmm. Not too far from here, but far enough that it's the country.
Was there a, this is going to sound like a weirdly specific question, is there a pig farm out that way?
Probably.
No, because I feel like I was on the way somewhere and I stopped at a pig farm near a town that sounded like that.
Interesting.
And I bought the best bacon that I've ever had in my life. I don't know if you're a vegetarian or not, so I apologize.
I do practice veganism.
Okay, or vegan. Okay, so let's not talk all about bacon then.
I'm okay. Yeah. No. I'm not sensitive towards that stuff. That's okay. I don't know specifically about the pig farm, but probably. There's a really fantastic berry farm called Twinkleberries, which is just the most quintessential small town name. I actually lived right across from it, and we would go quite often growing up to Twinkleberry farms. It
sounds like a storybook.
I know.
That's
well,
cute.
Uxbridge is so away from the rest of the world. It's almost like a Pleasantville, where it's just in its own little bubble. And so you grow up and everything is, on that surface level, everybody's kind of happy, and the bad stuff, it just kind of, people just push that stuff down and they pretend like it doesn't exist. And then when you leave, when you come to Toronto or when you go to the real world, you're like, right. All of the real stuff is just coming to the surface, and people are much more authentic and speak their mind here, and they're much more themselves. Where Uxbridge, I find that it's, there's one type of culture there. It's
white.
Yes, that is exactly it. I'm glad you said that. Yes, exactly.
I grew up in a probably not as small of a town, but a small city on the East Coast as well, which was very much my experience.
Totally. And then there's like something that's really wholesome about small towns too. Because it is like a smaller community, you do feel affected by one another, where I feel like we do lose that a little bit in the city. Cities can be really isolating.
Sure, I don't know my neighbors.
Right. And in Uxbridge you do. In Uxbridge you talk to them quite frequently, actually. And so it would be really interesting to take the beneficial parts of cities and of, the country living and put them together and somehow
I think that's called
marry
the
them.
suburbs, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, God. But I don't want to live there either.
So, big family or what kind of?
No, sort of. My family's very divorced. Okay. Ultra divorced.
Okay.
Extra divorced
it's like
family.
Really mastering divorce.
Yeah. Nailed it. We nailed it. My mom and my dad were together, and then they split when I was 7. And I have my brother, and then they both got together with different partners after that. And I have a half sister, and I have a few stepsisters and a stepbrother, and then another stepbrother. So it's all
mixed.
Yeah, it's all mixed. Yeah.
Did you ever, because I came from a blended family as well, so maybe I'm projecting all my own personal stuff onto you. Which don't worry, I do that to everybody. But, did you ever feel like though that, especially as a younger kid, trying to find your place in that mix of who, is this the original family or where do I fit with the new family?
Yeah, totally. You know what? There was never a language around that. I don't think my parents they weren't necessarily so forward thinking to think like, maybe we should all sit down with each other and discuss the dynamics here and try to bring the kids in and discuss it with them too. So I got a lot of education through movies, and that's not, you're not supposed to be educated through, rom-coms or movies about, like The Parent Trap. Like that's what I thought was going to happen eventually. I was like, I just got to get mom and dad back just like Lindsay Lohan did in The Parent Trap, So it was hard for me to really grasp reality because I was so submerged in film. It was difficult for me to understand mom and dad aren't getting back together, and your place is to just kind of float around between the two and also have a stepmom and also have a stepdad, and hopefully everybody's just happy. But there are times where I look back and I'm like, I was having so much anxiety over it. Like I was exhibiting signs of having anxiety from a very, very, very young age, and nobody addressed it. Around 7. Yeah. When they split, we were living in this house in Little Britain, which is even smaller than Uxbridge. It's called Little Britain.
Right.
Like, I mean,
tiny
and
Britain.
so white, and like it's the whitest, most tiniest town in Ontario. But we moved from there, and we moved. My mom and I, and my brother, we moved to Markham, and my dad would leave. He would pick us up for a night and then he would leave, and I wasn't understanding it. Like that transition period was really hard. And so I would just freak out to the point where I would be like on the ground. I would be on the ground crying and I wouldn't be able to breathe. And it was getting really bad to the point where my mom brought us to a counseling session.
Okay.
And we kind of just talked it out, but it was just one session, and then we were left again. But I started to have problems in school. That was where the anxiety was really starting to manifest, whereas I would go to school and I would realize that I was alone. I didn't have mom or dad there. I didn't, it was an unfamiliar environment, and the teachers were, had to be in charge of 20 to 30 kids. And so I would start to just get up and I would start to cry, or I would just get up and just wander and start walking around the classroom and just start to kind of want to be by their desk, or kind of just, or even just be a nuisance, like not wanting to do my work and just, and that's happened, looking back now, I mean, that's happened from the time that I can remember to just, and then when they would sit me down to try to do my work, it's like I couldn't learn. Like I was so anxious that I couldn't learn and I couldn't focus. And I constantly asked to just like go home and see my mom, and I'm feeling sick. I don't want to be here, that kind of thing over and over and over again. So neither one of my parents were like, there's something going on here.
Right. But like like you said, it's a different time.
Totally.
They did the best with the tools they had.
Yeah, right. And in our spaces of talking about mental health and mental illness and stuff, symptoms are symptoms. And, if a kid was like having a fever, you would take them out of school. And if a kid is being disruptive or having behavioral problems, it's the same thing. Like you address them. Right. You take them to an appropriate doctor for them. It's not just, hey, we have to get you. You have to change your behavior. You just have to focus, or you just have to pay attention. You just have to stay in your seat. There's something bigger going on.
So what was the result of all this for you then? Did it eventually culminate in something, or what? Did you ever get help for these struggles?
Yes, and no. The anxiety never really went away. It ended up. In high school, I ended up developing even like worse coping mechanisms for it. And high school was, naturally a dark time for everybody. Sure. And then if you're just going through stuff unresolved from your childhood, it's like extra dark. Another layer of dark on there.
What do you mean by that? How did you cope?
I started self-harming, and I started having more problems with eating. That was something that that happened when we were moving around after the first initial divorce. When we were moving around, we moved from Markham to Stouffville, and then went to Uxbridge. So I went to a few different schools, and I started to overeat, and I started to hide food. And this is a symptom that they see in children in foster care, where they'll start to just hide food around their foster home and stuff. And it has to do with feeling alone, and the food kind of gives you a something that's safe, something that you can rely on, something that you know is there.
Control.
And then you get exactly. So I started doing that, and I was like a very normal sized child, but people were like mentioning my weight often. And so I just kind of grew up knowing that like, oh, I'm a little bit bigger than others. But like you look back on pictures and I'm so normal. I'm just a kid. Like I'm just a child.
I've never been a young girl, but I imagine that this is something that most young girls experience.
Absolutely. And like any kid that's just, that just is slightly, just maybe looks a little bit like chubby, or I just like wanna, it's just so normal though. It's just that's their body. That's, and So with me and doing little things like binge eating when no one's around and doing that as a kid, and then also having people comment on my body and my weight and stuff, and just little stuff like, oh, that's baby fat and you'll eventually grow out of it, having those types of comments, or like when you become a teenager, you can start dieting and then it'll like come off. You just like little stuff like that. That when I did become a teenager and you're going through those self-actualization moments of, wow, I'm a person and there's this society and that's affecting me and I'm affecting it. You start to really conceptualize of like, what's going on with me and like, why am I messed up or why do I have these problems? But I didn't have the tools to also fix them. And so I just started to just express myself in really like just negative ways, like self-harming or restricting food, and then unfortunately binging because I was just so hungry.
Was your relationship with food or the restricting food, was that another form of self-harm or was it something else?
I think it's definitely a form of self-harm objectively, but I think but subjectively, I think it's a form of control. If you restrict, then you're doing good. If you restrict, then you are following the rules of, this is the way to become thinner. This is the way to eventually get happiness. You just you restrict and limit your food intake and stuff. And then, when you binge, you feel so guilty that then it's so cyclical. It just starts again. I'm
fascinated by this idea of control in particular that you've mentioned that, especially with young kids who feel out of control with everything. They can't control that mom or dad left. They can't control where they live or how they live.
Right.
But they can control this. I think that's similar for suicide and non-suicidal self-injury as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it should be a conversation that we should be having with kids existentially just when they're young, just saying like, there's a lot out of our control. Yeah. We really only get control, even this is, debatable. We only get control of how we react to things. But that's, of course, when you're made up of like chemicals and neurons and and a nervous system, like really what's in your control, like how much free will do we really have?
This is such an interesting area for me because I'm a big proponent of this idea of free will in theory.
Totally. It's a really great theory.
It is. But then again, I also don't want to, and I think this is a problem in the mental health space, I don't want to bang the drum so hard on biological determinism that people think they have no free will, that they're a victim of their brain. Well, you're not.
Right.
You can tell your brain what to do.
Right, yeah. And then it goes in the opposite direction too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think like opening up that conversation is really important, and understanding that like it's so everybody falls along the spectrum somewhere of how much one is affecting the other. And I love that I'm now in that space where I realize that and I recognize that, where sometimes I'll have thoughts of like just unconscious thoughts of like, maybe you should check the stove. Maybe you should like check the door like one more time. Like 3 times isn't enough. And then I'll realize that like, oh, actually I have freedom in this choice right now to either go and check the door or check the stove, or I could challenge myself and expose myself to my fear and not. And that's taken a lot of practice, but also it's so rewarding afterwards when you're able to just challenge and get over those humps. But I think that I try to tell people this in our space all of the time, that of course you have a choice, but also like it's okay sometimes to just do things automatically. Like that's what we unfortunately were victims of our automatic behavior all of the time. Where we just jump to something, we just have one thought to 2 thought, 3, and then 1,000 thoughts all of a sudden consume you, and it's really difficult to get control of your mind. And so I think that when we're kids growing up, having these conversations with kids, like we don't get to control the way that the earth spins and the way that we're in this massive universe, and none of us actually asked to be here. We could have those conversations as children and have them and have a framework of control and everything, or just like their place in the cosmos, but we don't.
Well, and give them more control over some things, right? That they can make some decisions in their life.
I've been talking to one of my best friends about this. She has a 6-year-old daughter, and giving the daughter control over how much she wants to eat, like not forcing her to finish what's on her plate, has been really powerful, because kids know best. If your child is objectively under eating, that's a different story. But most kids don't They will eat when they are hungry.
Well, and this is such an East Coast cultural thing too that I learned was that we grew up poor and of Irish, Scottish descent.
Right.
So you had to eat everything on your plate because you didn't know where it was coming from next, right?
Absolutely.
And that's how our parents were raised too. That you don't know when your next meal is coming, so you have to eat it all. However, it's not a coincidence that there's an obesity epidemic in an unhealthy respect, not certainly not in a self-image one, but in terms of affecting their health. So I think that. Part of it is taking in that social and cultural aspect as well. Yeah,
absolutely. Totally. There's going to be families where they do live, they're, in a scarcity mindset.
Where, that's the word for it.
Right. Yeah. And they will either even hoard resources because they don't know if they'll get them back again. They don't know if they'll have, the finances to be able to purchase them again. And so keep everything now and eat everything that's on your plate because who knows if you'll have it. And then there are people that live quite comfortably that still that will still force kids to eat past their comfort level or eat stuff that they genuinely don't like and they don't want to eat.
Right.
And you understand it from a perspective of you want them to get their greens and you want them to get their fruit and stuff, but there just has to be a better way of doing that instead of kind of having them have this messed up relationship with food from the beginning. Like food should always be a place of, I'm enjoying this. That's why I'm eating it. And it's nutritious for my body and that's why I'm eating it. This is fuel. It should never be like, I have to eat this, unfortunately. I don't want to eat this right now, but I'm like... that can come at like I can come at that 1,000 different angles as well.
I grew up on Kraft Dinner and gummy bears,
right?
And I turned out fine.
It's okay.
And I'm just talking about college.
Yeah.
Well, so
totally.
So when did you leave this small town and go out and try to figure things out?
Well, I went through a bit of a rough patch when I was 16. I was going through a lot of this stuff regarding self-harm, and I was staying out a lot, and I was, going through substance abuse, and my mom had no idea what to do. My mom and my stepdad had no idea what to do. And I was really disruptive at home, and as like one of their last resorts, I was kicked out. And so I ended up I was homeless for a few weeks and I was bouncing around from place to place and I was riding and I came downtown to Toronto because I knew a few people here, and the city just seemed so much more available than just me kind of being in Uxbridge and not having a home and everything. And so I was here for a few weeks and then I lived in Aurora for about a year with my dad because I couldn't go back home to my mom. Things were just a little bit too tense between us. And then after that, I went back to Uxbridge, and then a year later, I ended up coming to Toronto. So I've been in Toronto for about 8 or 9 years now. And it's definitely been... The city's fantastic, but I definitely miss some of that country life.
Yeah,
I definitely miss some of that.
And I find too, especially, I feel like I'm too young to be saying this, but as I get older, I miss it more and more.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Again, there's just something about it. But then I leave the city and I go to the country, and then I'm like, okay, gotta get back to real life now.
That was a nice 2 days. It's time to go.
So I'm always unhappy.
Sure. Well, actually, that's an interesting point in terms of your frame of reference, that if you're always looking for something else beyond what you currently have.
Yeah, totally. Like, I mean, I definitely practice more gratitude than I ever have. And so being in the city isn't the worst thing, but I do try to put goals down of places that I want to travel. And I try to be open-minded of like, this is probably not my home. I'll probably find another place to call home, and who knows in the world where that will be. And just trying to be open-minded and like, stay excited for it, even though that could be super scary and like I don't know how that'll end up.
What's scarier for you though, being open-minded or settling down?
Settling down for sure. Yeah.
Why?
For sure.
What's so scary about that?
I don't want to. It's like I don't want to miss out on the world. A part of my anxiety growing up. My mom has anxiety. She's very, very, very specific travel anxiety, and so we'd never ever traveled a lot when we were kids, at like almost ever. If there was rainy weather or snow, like she would keep us home because she was scared something would happen on the bus or in a car with somebody else. And planes were totally out of the question and everything. And then that definitely was transferred a little bit onto me.
Sure.
And so I didn't travel out of the country. I didn't get on a plane until I was 23. And that was like, that was so scary. And then also the best type of life change ever, where I was like, oh my God, I'm above a city right now. This is so wild. How can this be? And like, it was just such a perspective shift too, of just realizing that there were just like tens of millions of lives that I was just passing by. And I was going from New York to California, and we just kept going over city, and I was watching it on the monitor, and I was just like, I was such a nerd. I was just like geeking out the whole time.
It's still one of my favorite experiences. I do it all the time, and I love it.
It's such a fantastic perspective shift, I think, to just be up there and just to realize how many stories and how many lives are being lived, and just that you're not the only one at all. And that was huge. And so settling down will make me feel like I'll miss that. I'll miss like finding out the magic in this little town or this city, or, you know, finding just different lives to connect to and stuff. Yeah. I definitely think that home is what you make it. And so if I do travel, if I end up traveling quite a bit in my life, I'll just try to make home wherever I can and settle in with that.
Well, while you've made Toronto your home, you've become an Instagram star. You know, you've certainly developed a following. I don't know what to say to that. That wasn't a question. So how did you make that bridge then from struggling, from really still trying to figure yourself out, to really being somebody that other people look to as having it all figured out?
Oh my gosh, right? Which I don't.
Right. We'll talk more about that part too. But
I'm sure you felt that too.
Oh, absolutely. I feel like that all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
But how did you get there? How did you build that and speak so openly?
Yeah. So I ended up doing a weight loss program a few years ago. And this was before I had any knowledge about the self-acceptance community, the mental health community. Like I still didn't know that those things existed online. And I ended up signing up for this like weight loss and fitness program. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to take this like really seriously. So I made an Instagram account for it, and I like started posting up about, you know, my body and just like my workouts that I was doing. And I slowly but surely like realized that there was such a huge fitness community and that this fitness community was so supportive and so incredible. And I'd never been a part of something like that before. So I started to post more often, and this community was just super awesome and really, really, really great. And eventually I was losing weight, and I was losing weight, and I was losing weight. And I went through a plateau, which is to be expected and to happen. And then all of the bad stuff started to come up. My poor body image started to come up. I started to like really deal with the self-hate again. It just like, it all seemed to just have been like somewhere in my body, just like stayed. It's as if it stayed hidden throughout this weight loss, and then it just came up again. And I was like, oh my God, I thought that all of this stuff would just leave if I just lost weight. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so I was like freaking out and just really, really, really in a bad headspace. And I ended up searching a hashtag, and this could be the power of social media, but I searched self-acceptance because I didn't know what else to do. I had no idea what to do. And under the self-acceptance hashtag, I ended up seeing all of these women that were just embracing themselves, and I literally had no idea that could even exist. And I was so inspired. I was so deeply inspired that it's like I was hijacked out of that moment, and those bad feelings just completely went away just through being inspired, through this inspiration. And then I went home, and I just ended up following like hundreds of different accounts that night, and I had no idea that you could love yourself as you are. That seemed like such a foreign concept to me. And then the next day, through being that inspired, I just took a photo of myself in my sports bra and my leggings, just sitting down how I looked, and not hiding anything, not posing, not in a fitness related picture. I just was existing. And I posted online, and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing this. This is so scary. What the heck? And from that moment on, I've just been progressively getting more and more transparent with my journey online, and trying to open up about stuff and trying to connect with others with their own journeys. And I ended up developing a mental health narrative and diving into that community, and then diving into the body acceptance community, and from there just growing the community, the self-love community, and just trying to be an advocate of self-love and self-knowledge and mental health and self-care. And it's grown, and which is really great. I'm really, really, really grateful for it. And it's the best. It was just so unexpected. Like it's so wild that I posted that photo, because I was the type of person that, like, I would never even be with my partner unless it was like any boyfriend that I ever had. It would be like lights off, like let's just like. I was so uncomfortable with my body that for me to publicly post about it was so not Kenzie. And now it is. And now, I took the leap, and it was the best leap I've ever taken.
So what have you learned then about self-love, about body acceptance, self-esteem, all of these things that you didn't know when you started this out, when you first posted that picture? I thought
when I first started the journey, similar to the weight loss journey, when you first start it, you think that like, okay, I'm going to take care of all of the bad stuff now. Like, I'm going to take care of all my unresolved issues now. And you realize that like you don't live in a vacuum. So society is always going to kind of be there. There's always going to be these hurdles to get over. There's always going to be billboards of women that don't look like you, or men that don't look like you, or whatever it is. And you're just always going to have to remind yourself that that's what we're fixing. That's like what we're trying to change. Because there's moments where I'll still come to a place where I'm like, oh, I don't feel good about myself today. I'm not confident. I don't think that I'm that intelligent. Like, I don't know I just don't feel good about myself. And then that was surprising me a year into the journey of where I was like, isn't this supposed to go away? Aren't I supposed to not deal with this anymore? And it's not that you won't ever deal with it again. It's just that you deal with it differently. It's that you deal with it less, or you deal with it differently, or you have healthier coping mechanisms. You reach out instead of internalizing it. You don't isolate yourself. You check in with your community. You self-care. You practice whatever self-care rituals, that bring you to a place of well-being. It's instead of, harming yourself, or instead of isolating, or instead of keeping secrets, or not telling anybody what you're going through. It's just you deal with it differently. And so it affects you differently. It might not affect you as deeply as it did before. It might not stick around as long. You might bounce back. You have more resiliency, and there's less of a period for you to recover in those bad moments. Right.
A lot of young people, especially who reach out to me, I notice a similar theme in things that they say. And I'm wondering if you notice this too, where they almost have this narrative of why did this have to happen to me? Why did I get cursed with this when everybody else is so normal, everybody else is fine? Why did I pull the short straw and get cursed with this? And, why do I have to just manage this for the rest of my life?
Yeah.
Do you think that that's actually the case, or to a certain degree, is this just real life? This is how living real life is, that we manage these kinds of struggles? Yeah,
a little bit of both, actually. I think that the question, why is this happening to me? That's the realest. That's like, you're in it. When you ask that question, you're in it. It's very hard to get out of that perspective. And I felt that perspective like a month ago, where I was like, I don't think anybody's ever felt like this before. Right. And then, of course, there's, the objective part of me, the Kenzie that's like, girl, that other people have felt this before. And you talk about that all the time. Right. But when you're in it, you just have to experience that. Like, I think you just have to realize that you are alone in your head at times. And that's one essence of being human. And I can't take that away from people, because at the same time, that's also the birthplace of all of your creative inspirations and the things that you come up with in your imagination. No one else is there for that either. And so I have to remind myself that there's a flip side to that coin, but there's also, like, I think we have more of those moments of of existential dread of like, I think that I'm the only one that goes through this. Everybody else is normal. What is the meaning of all of this? Why am I here? Why am I being put through this? I think we're pressured into that perspective more than what we should be, just based on society, on the fact that we don't actually we don't grow up checking in with each other. We don't grow up in a 150-person tribe where everybody knows each other and everybody's quite involved with what you're doing and what you're thinking and what you're saying like and how you're feeling.
Uxbridge or Little Britain.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think we're put through a little bit more isolation than what we actually need to be going through. But some of the greatest perspective shifts that I've had have been out of that pain, out of the pain of I'm so alone. I'm so alone inside of my head. I'm so alone in these experiences. And then for me to just grieve and deal with that, just the idea that like there's nobody else in here but me.
Yeah.
And going through that, and then, you know, like you shed your tears, you have like your very respected and much needed breakdown, and then you wake up again and you do it all over again, and then you find a connection with somebody, you know, talking about it with you or talking about it with a friend who say, I've gone through that, you know, and then you feel a little bit less alone, and then the pain eventually, it goes away. That painfulness of being alone inside of your head or why is this happening to me? It does go away and you do make sense of it.
Yeah. One of the best / worst pieces of advice that I've ever received after my mother died a few years ago unexpectedly.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Thank you. And it's, you know, it was a really difficult experience because she was young. It was, like I said, unexpected. But somebody told me at some point along the way, this is going to suck. And it's supposed to.
Yeah.
Let it suck.
Right. Yeah.
Because if you don't, then you're not dealing with it. We find so many other ways to try to make life not suck for a little while.
Totally.
When sometimes it just does, and that's okay, and we have to ride it out and let it pass.
Oh my gosh. Absolutely.
Right?
And validating that pain and that sadness is, instead of somebody saying, oh, let me distract you and like let me try to make you happy. Yeah. I think there's a lot of power in that. And it's not to say that it isn't going to hurt. And it's not to say that it isn't going to feel like it's going to last forever, but it doesn't. And I don't know what happens in the brain. I've been trying to figure it out. Like I've been trying to do research on neurobiology of like what happens when you're in those intense moments of sadness. Because for me, personally, the way that it feels is like this moment's going to last forever.
The blinders go on.
Yeah.
I talked about this in my TED Talk, how it's just this complete collapse in on this moment.
Yeah.
That's all you see.
Yeah. Oh, your TED Talk was so fantastic.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh. It's obviously, it's one of my favorites. But you mentioned it so perfectly when you were talking about the when somebody cuts you off and you get in that heated moment of where you're like, I'm going to say every swear word known to man. And you're so angry or you're so upset that this person cut you off. And then that feeling goes away and then you go about your drive. But for some people, it doesn't go away. Yeah. To me, that's such a beautiful way to put it, because in those moments of sadness or in those moments of angst or anger or whatever negative emotion it is, it feels like it's going to last forever. And there's something about that, like a part of the brain that like experiences time, like it shuts down or something happens where it just feels like
I've said this to people that I need a neuropsychologist or a neurobiologist best friend now, because I've got so many of these questions too. But you know, you're right, and you get so locked in this place. And one of the things that I've learned through the mindfulness tradition, I think, or mindfulness practice, is that one of the things that keeps you stuck there is you're grasping to it. You're focusing on it. You're not letting it go.
Right.
So it's not going to go because you're not letting it go.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So instead, just letting it suck and let it pass away.
Yeah, right? Totally. Yeah, that's hard. That's hard too.
Yeah.
And that's like,
it's just about the hardest thing in the world. And that's why I said it was also the worst piece of advice, because it sucks. It's awful.
Yes.
It's terrible.
Yeah, totally. I know. I've been practicing mindfulness now, and I've been doing my meditations and stuff. And I've been realizing that like the power of harnessing your mind and harnessing your focus and where your attention goes when you're not paying attention to it is so powerful. I cannot tell you how many times where I've realized that what I'm thinking isn't conducive to how I want to be feeling. Right. And then I remind myself to think about better things or think about it in a more constructive and positive way. Yeah. Because so often our minds go to our default mode network and we start, getting into situations that we can't undo, or we fantasize about the future and it might not be great.
Right.
And we go about and we do that over and over again. And then all of a sudden we feel like crap.
Yeah.
And
well, it turns out the mind is basically a muscle like anything else. The more you practice certain ways of thinking.
Yeah,
and a lot of people don't believe me when I tell them that you can practice other ways of thinking, and that it's really hard at first, but it gets easier over time. And have you done cognitive behavioral therapy or DBT or anything?
I've done CBT.
CBT, yeah. So it sounds like
that's what I was getting.
Yeah.
I've been doing that. I work with a therapist online, doing some CBT exercises, and they've been really, really, really helpful for me to check on my behavior, because I struggle with when I was 18, I had a full blown OCD paranoia episode that lasted for about a year and a half, where I was it's a form of anxiety, right? And so I was terrified that it sounds so silly when you're out of it, but when you're in it, it was like
it's the worst.
It's like this is so real, man. Yeah. But I was scared that people were trying to poison me, and I didn't know who these people were, and I didn't know whether or not it was one person, or whether or not it was a group, or whether or not it was my family, or who it was. But I was convinced that it was just so easy to poison people. Why wouldn't somebody be trying to poison me? And so I was going through, how do I not, like, if something's like left on this desk, or if this apple, if somebody put something on this apple, like, how could I eat it? How could I drink this water? Right. And I was going through these rituals of having to clean stuff and having to wash certain things and having to only eat at certain times. And it was a really bad period of my life. But when I got over it to the point where I can function. I dropped out of school for a bit and I had to quit my job, but now it's totally manageable. And so when I realize now, when I'm super stressed and when I'm not taking time, when I'm not taking in a couple of hours for self-care, or when I'm not checking in with myself, I'll start to do what I mentioned earlier, where I'll start to check the stove a little too often.
Slide back into that old comfortable way of being.
Totally. And I was like, oh, maybe you could prevent this. Like, maybe you could start noticing the warning signs. Like, maybe when you're stressed, all of a sudden you start feeling out of control. Yeah. And instead of either embracing it or instead of handling your stressors, you start adding in these coping mechanisms of checking the stove, checking the lock, making sure every element is off, 100 times. And then all of a sudden you're late for your appointment or you're late for your meeting. So checking in with myself often, realizing that, my schedule's a little too full for this week. I have to rearrange some stuff, or else it's just going to affect my health. Sure. And phrasing it like that makes it easier for me to just reorganize my schedule. So then that way I don't get into those headspaces. But CBT has been
helping you plan with that and say
so incredible. Yeah. So I mean, it's there's a lot of exposure that goes with it, but it's the best at the same time. I actually just read. Do you read a lot? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So I just read Jeffrey Lieberman's book, The Untold History of Psychiatry.
Right. Yeah, I haven't read it, but I'm familiar with it.
Oh my God, changed my. It's one of the best books I've ever.
He was head of NAMI or not NAMI, SAMHSA or something like that.
Yeah. And he was on the board of the American Psychiatric Association. And he's phenomenal. Everything in that book, you will love it because you will just have so much knowledge of where our therapists are coming from and just the system that they've come from, and the story between when they were treating the mind as if it was the soul or the spirit, and then the separation between neuroscience and psychiatry, when there was actually what's physicalizing in the brain versus what's manifesting from it, right? And oh my God, it's just so.
What a great way to phrase it! Yeah, manifesting from it versus
totally, like
chicken
this,
or egg kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely, and. We've come so far and everything from it, but there's the one story of, I think his name's Tim Beck, who created CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. Aaron Beck. There's the story of how he was, he loved Freud and he wanted to be a psychoanalyst, and he was like, I'm gonna make sure that it's right. I'm gonna prove that it's right, and then all of his research came back that it's not right at all.
Well, I wouldn't say it's not right. I'm not a Freudian by any means, but
but it was mostly not right. He was realizing that apparently, with his patients who struggled with depressive disorders, that if you make them feel better about their situation, they actually are happier. Who knew?
I think it's actually both. It's you're drawing awareness to all the reasons of why they are the way they are by digging into their childhood or whatever else.
Yeah.
But at some point, you got to move on.
Right. Yeah.
At some point, you need some skills.
Yes,
great, you got the awareness,
absolutely.
but what are you going to do about it?
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But it's a really, really, really great story. I learned a lot from it, and I so much respect.
Aaron Beck is still kicking, actually. He's in his 90s now at the Beck
amazing.
Institute. Yeah, his whole family. I follow him on social media.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
incredible.
I recommend checking him out.
Oh, absolutely. I will. Absolutely. There's a really good story in there of Robert Spitzer, who created the DSM-3, but it was the DSM, both DSMs prior to that weren't research-based. They weren't scientific. And then the DSM-3, they brought together this task force, which sounds like from a Marvel movie. Like, we're the task force of the DSM.
Bunch of psychiatrists,
And then they were making sure that everything was coming from objective of empirical evidence, and how so many psychoanalysts push back from it because so much of it was faith-based, and how he was just quite adamant and spent like hours and years just like putting together all of this research and all this information for the DSM-3 to come out, and how it's, you know, transformed psychiatry since and stuff.
Well, and there's certainly always controversy on every edition of the DSM now.
Yeah, I know. There's a lot of drama regarding that.
There's
always, That's another thing about the mental health community, is that we're all talking about our experiences, and I think that it's such a broken system that we have of, because somebody might come to me and they'll say, like, I'm experiencing this, and, and I'm not a clinician, like I'm not a healthcare practitioner. And so I can just be there for them and offer them what I would offer myself in that situation. Right. And I would want everybody to have a therapist, because I would want everybody to have a doctor. Like, to me, that's common practice. But what type of therapy is useful for a person, and what should they be doing in therapy, and what therapist is the right therapist for them? And
this is it. And people, I think, it's a very attractive notion to think, well, my brain is just broken and I need to find the right medication to fix it.
Right.
Unfortunately, it's a lot more complicated than that. And medication doesn't even work. Actually, medication only works for about a third of people. But psychotherapy actually works really well, it turns out, better than medication in a lot of respects. But it's finding that right therapist, the right type of therapy.
Totally.
And more importantly, I think, is whatever therapist you get, whatever type of therapy you're doing, keep doing it. Unless it's hurting, unless it's doing something bad, but keep doing it, because it takes practice, and you get better at it over time.
Oh my God, absolutely. Yeah. I think that the idea that it could only be one or the other, like you could take medication and then be totally fine, I think you're reducing it down to something way too oversimplistic. And then also the idea that you could just talk about it, and then that also might just make it go away.
Right. Yeah. If I can't get out of bed in the morning, I can't get to see my therapist.
Yeah. Totally. And that's a really great conversation to be having in mental health spaces, to realize that it could be a little bit of both. Somebody might just be, chemically imbalanced. Somebody, it might just be totally situational for somebody. It might just literally be their work. And the fact that they have to go to work 5 days out of the week, 8 hours a day, that might be putting them into a depressed headspace. And so,
well, and the reality too, though, is that I've never met anybody where it was one or the other. That it's always a blend of all of them, and that they impact each other as well. That your way of thinking impacts your brain obviously impacts your way of thinking, and that you can change everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think that I would love to bring this up. I don't think that we celebrate people's recovery periods as much as we should. I think we oftentimes get stuck on people that the therapy isn't working or the medication isn't working, and those times are the loudest stories, and they should be. They should be, because we should be figuring out solutions.
Sure.
We should be exploring different therapies for them, whether or not it's ecotherapy or DBT or CBT or psychotherapy or whatever it is. We should be figuring out different solutions or medications or doses or whatever. But on the other hand, you never hear too much about the people that are like, yeah, I'm fine. I did psychotherapy for a year and a half, or I've taken an antidepressant or an antipsychotic, and I'm fine.
And I've said exactly this to people before, and most people don't believe me, that recovery is more common than it's not. The stories that you're seeing are people that it's the really tragic ones, yes,
absolutely.
But it's not representative of the majority. And actually, very often, people don't even get any kind of intervention or help. Some people just bear it out through grit. That's not what I would recommend.
I know.
But
oh my God.
I've been there too.
Oh my God, absolutely.
But people recover all the time, so it doesn't have to be a life sentence. That's a lie. You don't have to necessarily live with this for your entire life.
Absolutely. And so many people have been able to get to that other side to like see the light, and then they're off living their life, and then we never hear about them.
This is it, and you don't know that you can get there until you do.
Yeah, totally.
I never would have believed me as a 15-year-old kid that I would someday get through it. Right?
Same. And actually, somebody asked me in an interview that I had a couple months ago, and I was very specific with how I answered it. They said, "How important was it for you to get a diagnosis?" And I knew that I had to answer it very specifically because what I said was, it wasn't so much the diagnosis, it was just the fact that somebody was listening to me. Right. Because too often I think that we rely too much on a diagnosis, or we rely on the fact that I am a person that has anxiety. Sure. I am a depressed person.
Well, we want to be included in the community, I think.
Totally. And that community gives us a sense of connection. Yeah. So if you do recover and you are no longer a part of that community, what happens? And I think that's a great conversation to be having in our spaces as well, because for so long I didn't know who I was without my problems, without my anxieties, or without my body image issues, or without my eating issues. I didn't know who I was. And now that I've stepped into Kenzie without those things, because I would say that I am in recovery, I don't struggle with anxiety. It's not chronic. It doesn't, interfere with my day. I don't struggle with my body image and eating as well.
Congratulations. That's a huge step.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been definitely hard, but definitely worth it. But it's been scary, not being able to be involved in those or not, almost like a victim of myself. Like I didn't know who I was without those struggles.
Yeah. Have you gotten anything yet from people within the community? Well, what does she know? She doesn't deal with what we deal with?
Okay, surprisingly, no, because I'm pretty good at staying in my own lane.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've experienced this actually when the TED Talk first came out. It was that, look at this guy on this stage and he looks good and he's well-spoken and all this stuff. I almost threw up right before I came on stage.
Yeah, of course, of course.
But it's that image that people perceive, that just because they don't see you actively struggling right here and right now, then it's that zoomed in on that one little moment.
Such a great, and having that myopic perspective is so damaging, because then you limit the scope of being human in general. I mean, if you look at any single person, they could have the story of their life could blow your mind. Right. And if you look at people that are predominant, like if you look at white populations that they are middle class and they seem to have it all. They live in the suburbs. They have 2.5 kids. They have, like picket fence and a golden retriever. The majority of them do have low-grade depression or low-grade anxiety, statistically speaking. That to me is astounding. And the fact that we're thinking that people can't feel pain, or the fact that we would judge people on their appearance and assume that they wouldn't be going through something is harmful. And it's harmful to communities, marginalized communities. Absolutely. I mean, like the fact that there is medical racism, that's ridiculous. That's terrible. That's something we should be, totally writing out of our history. And so I think about those types of things, the way that we aesthetically judge people. And I'm like, wow, I have no idea what anybody's story is. And I can't ever, just because somebody would walk in here and they might look slightly differently than me, I might have this preconceived notion of them, but I actually have no idea who they are. Right. And so instead of judging them, I could actually try to figure out who they are. Or I could ask them a question about their life.
Heaven forbid,
Totally. But when, in the past when I've watched your TED Talk, I have thought about, I wonder if he's gotten any comments about the fact that he's in a place where he is well put together and he is articulate and he is telling his story from a place of being much more secure and much more confident, and, in not being in a place where telling the story would make you fall back into that situation.
Well, I think that, out of necessity, and maybe you've experienced this too, people who have experienced challenges in their mental health learn to become very good actors at some point.
Right.
I don't identify as an actor by any means, but I know how to to communicate certain experiences. I'm not always going to be crying and sad with my black cloak on, and this takes a lot of different forms, right?
Yeah, totally. Absolutely, yeah.
And even in recovery, I relapse once a year or so, but then I get through it because I know that's my pattern and I'll be fine.
Yeah,
but that doesn't mean that I don't still experience it from time to time.
Right. Totally. And I think like it's a really good, it's a good lesson to show people that somebody could be articulate and could be well dressed and still have dealt with that or still be dealing with something like that, something as severe.
I've wondered this before too, and we probably should wrap up at some point, but
we can try. We can do that.
We can try. But I wonder how much of it too, not to over psychoanalyze our audiences, but how much of it is.
But let's do that.
But let's do that anyway. Yeah, I don't want to do this, but here we're about to do it. No, but I wonder how much of it, and I try to remind myself of this, is people projecting some of that black and white thinking, some of the stuff that they're struggling with, and then projecting it out onto the world as though that's the real world. Projecting out that person must be okay because they look okay, or that thing must be terrible because it looks or sounds or feels terrible.
Right.
Really, almost everything is way more complicated than that. Right?
Absolutely, yeah. And again, we have to like give up our control of realizing that we don't actually know. We have no idea what that person's life is like. We have absolutely no idea if that community is actually experiencing life happy and carefree and totally set and secure. We gotta leave those preconceived notions behind, but I think that we have to give up an element of we have the world figured out. Yeah, totally.
Just being able to say, I don't know.
Yeah,
I have no
idea. Yeah, and that's really uncomfortable for a lot of us to say. I mean, that's uncomfortable for me to say, but the more you practice saying I don't know or saying like that's a mystery, the more that you actually do get to genuinely investigate it, and then you get to add knowledge into it.
Yeah, and that's that openness too that you're talking about.
Totally.
I think that so often I think people resist getting help because that might then admit that they can't do it themselves, that they don't have control, that they don't know something.
Yeah, exactly. But that means that you get, I love the idea of new information and new knowledge coming through that I get. That's like my happy space is when somebody teaches me something that I don't know or somebody proves me wrong. I love those moments because to me, it's adding value into my like library that like exists in my head where I'm like, oh, okay, that's how that person actually feels, or that's the fact of, of something that I've been wondering for a while. Yeah. So I think if more people practice that, they'd be put into more curious headspaces instead of more fixed mindsets.
I think that growth mindset, that I think curiosity really is a key to recovery.
Oh my God!
I don't know what this is going to do for me. I don't know why this is brought into my life or what it's supposed to teach me. But I'm willing to listen and let it teach me something.
Absolutely. I've mentioned that before to people that I don't think the antidote to depression or anxiety or just pain, just like struggling in general, is necessarily happiness, but rather being curious. Yeah. And if you ever ask a depressed person, or if you ever ask somebody who's going through a rough time, like, what are you curious about in the world? Like, you could see their face light up in so many different ways. And if they say, I'm not curious about the world, you could have a conversation of things that you're curious about. And just that, it just elevates you just past, even if it's 1 or 2%, just past a feeling of struggle and pain. It puts you into a different headspace. It just makes you think just a little bit with your imagination. And I think that the power of imagination, the power of curiosity can be life-changing for sure.
Kenzie Brenna, thank you so much. What a wonderful note to end on. That was a really beautiful piece of advice, and I'm so grateful for the work that you're doing, for all of the people that you're inspiring.
Thank
you're
you.
Doing
Likewise.
Work.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me.
Okay, that's my conversation with Kenzie Brenna. That's been one of my favorites so far. I really enjoyed talking to her. And go over and follow her on Instagram, especially all of her social media platforms, but Instagram especially, and to be really inspired by the great work that she does. So thank you for Kenzie for coming in and sharing that with us. I hope you're enjoying the show so far. All of our episodes are up weekly on Mondays. So please head over to Apple Podcasts or wherever it is you get your podcasts, but especially to Apple Podcasts. podcasts. Subscribe to the show. Leave us a rating. Leave some comments if you like. That stuff really makes a difference and really helps to support the show. So head over there, do that, subscribe, and leave a rating. You can follow me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, wherever else you can find me, at Mark Hennick. That's at MarkHenick. You can also go over to markhennick.com/so-called-normal for more updates about the show. If you want some free psychotherapy, free trial of psychotherapy anyway, to give it a try, see how you like it. It's online, safe, effective. You can do it from home in your underwear if you want. Just make sure that the camera's pointed at your face and not at your underwear because you don't want to freak out your therapist. But anyway, that's a different thing. If you want to try it, is my point, which I think you should, go to betterhelp.com/Mark. Enter the promo code Mark. You're going to get some free psychotherapy so you can try it out, see if it's right for you. If it is, great. Keep up your subscription and pay for it and go. It's actually very affordable, more affordable than face-to-face if that's an issue for you. But it's also very effective and research-backed. Everybody on there is screened. So head over to betterhelp.com/Mark. Enter the promo code Mark, and you can get a free trial of some online psychotherapy. That's it for us today. Come back and join us again next Monday. It's been a pleasure talking to you, as it is always. This has been So-Called Normal. I'm Mark Hennick. Take care.